Hello, you are listening to the DPW podcast. I'm your host, Caleb James. With me today, as always, what is your name? Spencer, the Washington Whale Walloper Church.
Yeah.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
Okay. Special guest today. I'm very excited for this. The author of Colony, a Callum Ross thriller, Mr. Benjamin Cross. How are you doing?
Hi guys, yeah, doing really well. Really pretty good at the moment. I say it's about 11 o'clock in the evening over here, so if I sound like I'm slurring my words or anything, then yeah, that's my excuse.
If you're slurring your words, you came to the right podcast.
Yeah.
I was going to say, yeah.
They kind of expect that here.
This is one of the few times I'm not actually drinking an alcoholic beverage on air, so that's probably good.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes for a better or worse podcast on our end. For those who haven't read Colony or unaware, this might be up your alley. Harmsworth, a remote mist-shrouded island in the Russian Arctic. Archaeology professor Callum Ross makes the discovery of a lifetime, a prehistoric ice mummy preserved for thousands of years by the sub-zero temperatures. Only they didn't die of natural causes. As Callum races to unravel the mystery of the mutilated corpse, others race to sabotage the expedition, and he and his team are left stranded on the island. And they are not alone. Someone, or something, relentless is stalking them. As the Arctic mist descends and the death toll rises, the team is thrust into a nightmare fight for survival, involving submarines, cyber warfare, and Spetsnaz. But none of this can prepare them for the real terror that survives deep within the island's heart. A secret so ancient it's been overlooked by time itself. Colony is an edge-of-your-seat action thriller that will appeal to fans of Clive Cussler, James Rollins, and Michael Critchin. I did not have a chance to read everything that you sent me. I read the prologue, some of Chapter 1, and then the introduction to Callum. So from what I've just gathered, obviously from the synopsis, it seems like a very action-paced novel.
Yeah,
And
it is.
It seems just like it's going to be really exciting.
Yeah.
I was actually looking for a physical copy I wanted to buy, because you sent me along the, like an ebook, but I like to have a physical copy, but wasn't available as of now.
No, I'm the same. It's definitely a difference, isn't there? If you can actually hold the book in your hands and sort of, thumb through it.
Oh, yeah.
It's much more part of the experience for me as well. But there were copies available in the US for a while, but they sold out, unfortunately, or fortunately.
Well, that's fortunate.
Yeah.
I'd say that's unfortunate.
Yeah. So I've been on to the publisher to try and find out when they're getting restocked, and apparently any day now. But yeah, things have slowed down because of how the world is.
I mean, that was actually going to lead up to something I wanted to ask you later, but we can start with that just as a sidebar. With book sales and things like that, has it been harder? Because you published January 20th, right?
Came out on the 28th of January, yeah, so just about a week and a half ago, I guess.
Yeah, and over in the UK, you guys just had a new mutated strain of COVID, so I don't know if you're having more shutdowns or not, but I would imagine that would put a little bit of a wrench in the whole process of putting out a book.
Yeah, it's it's changed the whole landscape of publishing, really, or at least marketing books.
Mm-hmm.
As you guys probably have seen as well, a lot of it shifted online, and so where you would have been going around to actual bookshops and doing sort of talks and sign-ins and stuff. Now it's, I did the launch for Colony using Zoom. So, I had a load of people just sort of, joined in, and we spoke to each other over the webcam, basically. But I think that's pretty much how everybody's doing it,
Yeah.
But in terms of like what we're doing over here at the moment, yeah, I mean, where I live in Wales, which is basically in the sort of southwest of the UK, we're all locked down again. We're not really allowed to go anywhere unless it's absolutely essential. So a lot of cabin fever going on.
I can only imagine. Yeah, that's got to suck. Over here, it's kind of like the Wild West. We're just state by state. Everybody does something different, and it's a total mess.
Yeah, I've been watching it, actually. It's been, I keep a keen eye on what's going on with you guys over there, and I know it seems like people have been trying to, take control of it at a national level, a federal level, but it's just not happening, is it?
No. Things have calmed down over the last few weeks. There's just at least a nice air of calm as of now.
Yeah.
I hope it stays that way. Hopefully things get better, but we'll see.
Yeah.
As far as the writing landscape, though, I've noticed since this whole thing started, I figured more people would be reading, and that hasn't really been the case. More people have been writing. Like for our site, we've had a lot of submissions this year. We do a Halloween, a horror submission period every year. Usually we get, maybe 50 to 100 submissions. Yeah. We had a lot this year. We
had to turn down some.
A lot. And I normally try not to turn down, obviously if it's bad writing or something. But, if the stories are decent, I don't usually turn down decent stories. But I couldn't keep up.
Yeah.
But as far as the readership, it's been down. So I was wondering, like, I mean, this is your first book. You don't really have anything to compare it to, but have you noticed just in the publishing world if sales are down?
I mean, I hadn't noticed that had happened at all, to be honest. It seemed to me as if sales were pretty much up. You know, people wanted escapism, particularly within like genres like horror and science fiction and, you know, that sort of thing. It's the word that I've had is that people are actually buying more books. Maybe they're not reading them, but they're kind of stockpiling them, you know,
right.
because they know that they're going to have a lot of spare time and all the rest of it. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. A lot of people are using this extra time that they've suddenly got to do things they've always wanted to do, haven't they? Like writing. So it doesn't surprise me that you're getting loads more submissions, you know?
I mean, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
More work comes out, that's better for everybody, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I was actually really interested to find out that you are an archaeologist. We don't get too many archaeologists on the podcast.
Yeah. You got 2 for 1 with me, Caleb. Yeah. It's something I've been doing for a few years now. I mean, I guess when I was at uni, I started off doing like learning about English, basically doing English lit, and it was putting me off reading books. You know, I had people telling me what I needed to read and when I needed to read it by and stuff, and that's not what it's about, is it?
No.
So I looked around really for something else that I found interesting, and I sort of noticed that there was an archaeology course. I'd never even thought you could do that, you know, to study it, and I got involved and never looked back. Really, you know, it's just a fascinating thing, and ever since then, been out digging in the field and, you know, writing up reports about it all, and yeah, it's been a wonderful career.
I feel like archaeology doesn't get talked about as much anymore as like it should be. Like, you know, you never.
Not since Indiana Jones.
Yeah. It's one of the first things that the lecturer said to us when we started on the course was, don't expect that you're going to get, you know, any large boulders rolling up here. Nobody's going to shoot at you with any arrows, you know.
Very few mummy curses.
That's it. Yeah.
How is your background in archaeology? Like the research that went into Colony, I would imagine, because you know, it's set kind of like a frozen wasteland. But like I said, I didn't get a chance to read the whole book, but I would imagine you used a lot of that knowledge to add some realism to the book.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's, you know, the main character is Callum Ross. He's a Scottish archaeology professor, and he basically gets sent over to this island, you know, and one of the things, he's not expecting to find anything. You know, this is, for archaeologists, this is so far north that they're thinking to themselves, you know, nobody's ever going to have lived there. It's uninhabitable, you know. But anyway, he gets roped into it and he ends up there, and then he suddenly realizes, well, hang on a minute, people were here thousands of years ago. And he finds this ice mummy. So it's basically a prehistoric person that's been frozen, you know, 8,000 years ago. And because they've been frozen, they're still absolutely, you know, nothing's decayed. So you can still see the face and they're still whole, really. So yeah, those sorts of aspects, they draw on things that I've, you know, been researching while I've been involved in archaeology, the process to like preservation of bodies and that sort of thing. Yeah, and a lot of Callum's, you know, backstory as well, really, has drawn from my experience with archaeology. So,
well, with things like the permafrost melting and whatnot, I always thought it was really cool when they find these specimens that are completely intact. Even like I think the dinosaur they found is still had like feathers or fur or something.
It's happening more and more as well, Caleb. It's, you know, I mean, this is one of the things that I guess kind of inspired this idea for setting it up in that region. You know, every day the permafrost is melting more and receding, and all these things are turning up, you know, frozen mammoths and, you know, all these sorts of things. And also because the ice is disappearing, people are finding, you know, flint tools and things much further north than they ever thought they'd find them. So yes, it's not good for the planet, but it's an exciting time for archaeology in that respect. So.
Well, from reading the prologue of Colony, it kind of gave me more of a vibe, like an impression of like at the Mountains of Madness or the movie The Thing, because, you know, like the frozen, those are in Antarctica, but like the frozen setting, but then you also have like the isolation.
Yeah,
and
you're
then
trapped in a certain area.
The quote unquote creature that, you know, obviously would unravel slowly throughout the book. Was there any specific fiction that inspired this story, or was it just, you know, amalgamation of different things?
I think it was kind of probably the second. You know, there wasn't one specific story that really inspired it. But I think that's when you mentioned the sense of isolation there. I mean, that's key to this book, you know. This island, as well as being where it is, and so for part of the year at least, it's subject to the midnight sun, you know, so it's constantly daytime, which is a very disorientating thing, you know. And I mean, it affects people at a very deep level psychologically as well. I think it, you know, in regions that experience these prolonged periods of no darkness, you know, suicide rates are higher, depression rates are, all this sort of stuff, you know, really does affect people. And then added to that, on this particular island, there's this very regular mist that kind of rolls in. You know, the climate there is such that it produces these very thick mists, which basically coat the island in this really sort of like thick, you know, swathe of gas. And it's all very, very disorienting and mysterious, you know. And I think that was one of the key things that I wanted to kind of use within the novel and create that tension, you know.
Well, that kind of atmosphere really lends itself to horror too, which is this kind of came across to me from what I read as a horror thriller, which is right in my wheelhouse. So, like I said, I definitely want to buy a physical copy. If you want to shoot me an email if that comes out, I would definitely get one right away. I was going to buy one today, but I couldn't. Have you noticed, this is kind of a bad segue, but just with like your social media presence and everything, what was the correlation between that and sales for the book?
I think it's really important. I mean, it's become very much more important recently. I had, so about maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I guess, when I was going around looking for agents and, you know, trying to actually get the book out there and get some representation, I had people would turn it around and saying, you know, what's your media presence like? And at the time, I didn't really have one, you know, back then, because I was spending my time writing, you know, rather than talking to people online and all the rest of it. And so, you could tell that they weren't very impressed with that, you know. And it's like, well, what do you want? I can't write and do that. But these days, it's kind of par for the course, you know. I think I was listening to another podcast that you guys did, and you were talking about this kind of broad aspect to it. You know, these days people are meant to be, publishers are expecting writers to do it a little bit themselves, you know. And we're not really marketers, are we? That's not what we got into this for. So, you know,
it used to be marketing was the publisher's job, not anymore.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. But I'd say, definitely for me, it's, you know, I'm really quite active on Twitter and Facebook, and get more so on Instagram now, but not as much.
But Instagram's always kind of hard for the writing, you know.
Poets do well.
Because
that's more of an image-based medium.
Yeah.
And then you have excerpts and things like that from your novel. But it's kind of hard to really get into that niche, you know, the Instagram author. Because I tried dabbling in it, and that's even with Twitter and stuff. I'm not a marketer. I don't really care to do things like that, and it's really not fun. Some people enjoy it, but I'm not one of those people. So that puts you in a tough spot. But when it comes to, like, when I write my first novel, I would obviously have to step that up a lot to get, because I was doing well for a while, and it was a time drag.
Well, and then also too, you also was getting in trouble too.
A little bit. We'll talk about that off there.
I was going to say, we want to watch what we say here, don't we? No, to be honest with you though, Caleb, I mean, before I started getting involved with Twitter and Facebook and stuff, I was kind of the same, you know. I didn't really I didn't know about it, and I didn't particularly think that I'd enjoy it. But I have to say that since I've got involved with Twitter in particular, I've actually made some really good friends on there, you know. And there's a great crew on there, like the writing community. So they hashtag themselves with #writing community, you know. And just some of the people I've met on there, I would actually consider to be friends now. And I never would have imagined that, you know, or expected it. So it's actually been quite a good thing for me, quite a positive thing, you know. And with Instagram, I've got no idea. You know, I'm still very much learning that. You know, I think my I don't know, whatever it is, my collage page must look like an awful mess. You know? But I don't know.
Just brainstorming. You could do a lot of cool archaeology things on there. I don't know how you tie that in with the writing, but you could.
Yeah, well, that's what I've been trying to do, actually. I think I've started off with it putting up, just random pictures of family, and, then I started putting up pictures of the book. And then I moved on to taking pictures of, bits that I'd found in the garden, like when I've been digging in the garden and finding bits and pieces, So I probably will end up putting on more archaeology than anything else. But,
See, that's one of the benefits of living in a country that's thousands of years old. You can find cool stuff in your backyard. The most we get is maybe arrowheads. Or the occasional Viking coin, which would that'd be really awesome to find one of those. I'll have to get your handle for Instagram later so I can follow you on there, because I don't think I am.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah.
Not that I have many followers on there. That's another thing. Like,
I was talking to my wife the other day, and she was, because she uses it quite a bit, and she was saying that, I didn't actually understand how you were meant to sort of do it, really. And she was saying, well, look, people are trying to create something that looks like a whole, even though it's made up of little pieces, all the pictures are supposed to come together and give a kind of an impression. And that was completely new on me, So it's a very, I think it's quite a nuanced piece of social media, really.
I've seen some of those done really well.
Yeah.
Again, that's something that I feel like you're putting a lot of effort into, which actually segues. This wasn't my next question, but it does segue perfectly into it. You wrote Colony over like a 10-year span or even more while working a day job?
Like an intense day job.
Yeah. See, my problem with both of our issue with our writing progress usually tends to deal with our day jobs, taking up time. Then obviously the social media is hard to follow. You only have so many hours in a day and so much energy. So how did you maintain a good writing schedule while working an intense day job?
Well, I think with Colony, because it was my first book, I didn't maintain no kind of, there wasn't a rhythm to it. It was completely arrhythmic,
That makes me feel better.
Yeah. No, absolutely. You got it. This is how it goes. I'd get into phases of like making sure that I was doing a little bit on the evenings or in the morning. I'd fit an hour in here and there in between, on lunch breaks and stuff. I'd just piece it together. It really was a big sort of, mash of little bits of time that I could kind of eke out of different parts of my day. One of the reasons it took so long, obviously. With archaeology, it's great fun, but it's very intense, and it's one of those things where you're not very settled. So it's not like you've got a routine, where you can add another element to it. You kind of, one day you're in the southwest, the next day, you're staying up in Scotland or wherever it is. And it's all very, here, there, and everywhere. So yeah, it's
and it seems like a very probably physical job, more than what I think more people would think. Like being out in the elements and stuff like that, and that can also be very draining.
Yeah, it can be. I did. This is before I started writing Colony. This is back in about 2007. I was working on a big pipeline job, so they were basically putting in a gas pipe, and it was this was miles and miles of pipe, and we just had to go ahead of it and dig what archaeology there was. And because it was such a big project with such a lot of money behind it, they were paying us huge amounts of overtime to basically work 80, 90, 100-hour weeks. You were doing 12+ hour days at least every day of the week. Jeez. And I remember on one stretch working for about 35 days straight, 12-hour days. I was an absolute zombie mentally, but physically I've never been so ripped. I can't, honestly, I'm not a ripped guy, but after that,
there's a benefit to everything, I guess.
yeah. But yeah, pretty intense sometimes.
I didn't even think of the travel schedule either. Yeah. How that would be hard to keep up with writing when you're on the road and here and there, flying everywhere. I'd be exhausted all the time if I were you. That sounds terrible, honestly.
Yeah, it was pretty exhausting. Yeah, I was fueled by beer and coffee for about 3 years. When
it comes to when you were writing Colony, did that just with your archaeology and stuff? Did you find maybe you're adding too much of that into the book? How much did you have to take out and anything like that? Contribute to the book in a positive way versus a negative?
I guess more than the archaeology stuff. That was the bit that kind of came more naturally to me. But there's a lot of stuff in this book which didn't, there's a lot of technology in there. So I talk about submarines and helicopters and, all sort of hovercraft, things like that, which I didn't know anything about, And I ended up doing an awful lot of research into to it. And those were the bits that I ended up having to trim out because I became so obsessed with these, these technologies. I was writing pages and pages about why a helicopter rotor goes the way it does, and that sort of stuff. So all that had to come back out. But with the archaeology, I guess it just kind of made sense, I could tell what Callum would think and what he would do, because I'm familiar with with that mindset, really.
Well, one of the difficult things about being a writer is when you're researching something and you're learning new things, you get so excited and passionate about those things you're learning that you want the reader to know all that stuff.
That's precisely it, yeah. But then you sit back and realise, but actually, it's irrelevant to the story. It's like, I've got to, as much as I love it and I think it's great and interesting, I'm going to have to chop it,
And you just fall down those rabbit holes of different, like the Wikipedias and the YouTubes of just looking up different things.
And then you're not even writing anymore. You're just watching videos and documentaries.
Oh man, that's regular, isn't it? You get into it, you're like, I've got a couple of hours, I can do some writing. 2 hours passes and you've just researched something which you're going to end up cutting out of your book,
Well, that's when you fall into, especially if you're working with a publisher and you have to submit your story to your editor, and then you're going from a creative endeavor to more of a commercial value of your book. So that's what they're thinking. So I would imagine they're giving you notes all the time. Hey, do you really need this? Take this out. That's probably got to be draining. I've never had to deal with that as of yet.
It was. I mean, the main one for me was with when I got my agent back in 2000 and 15, I think it was. She's great. I really love Joanna, but she basically told me to take out about 40 or 50,000 words.
Oh, no.
I'd written the original draft of Colony was about 160,000 words long, and I think it ended up being about 110. But she was absolutely right. Of course, it was all this it was stuff that I was finding fascinating, and also very big, long, extended action sequences,
right?
Which were great, but they didn't further the story at all. So they were
the pacing's the main thing. Editors they notice more than the writer usually, because you might think you're moving at a faster pace and moving the story along, but you bog it down. Even with action scenes, it goes on too long. You could almost make it a boring read by having too much action.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that was exactly what she picked up on with Colony. So, as painful as it was, I had to basically take an axe to it and cut, a good sort of quarter of what I'd written out, which was, it still haunts me to this day, but there we are.
Well, maybe you can save it and use it for something else.
You know what? This is what I've been thinking. Yeah, or like make it sort of extra content on the website, or like maybe in years to come, maybe do an unabridged.
Yeah, like an uncut version.
Yeah, or something like that. So I've still got it. I didn't take it out and then delete it. Yeah. Trust me.
Well, that's where if you start developing your fans, if you had a Patreon or a Kickstarter for something, you can throw those things into it, and not only get some more money your way, but people would really enjoy that. Especially if you're writing. Now, this wouldn't be you specifically, but like hard sci-fi or anything like that. When you have those details, there's a lot of stuff you're going to take out, but there are people who want to read those. Yeah. And they will pay for them. So it's always something to keep in mind. Don't delete.
No.
Always have a file. Don't delete. And name that file accordingly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing's worse than an unmarked folder.
What is that? I have so many of those. Like, I don't remember writing. This is a whole novella. I don't remember writing that at all.
It is crazy, isn't it, over the years, like the number of sort of started novels that you've got, which you never kind of like completed or, started short stories.
Now, could you imagine if this was like, not even that long ago before like computers and stuff like that was so available? You would just have like stacks of just paper, just like of unfinished things everywhere.
Yeah, you would. Yeah, tied together with string or like sealed with wax or whatever they did.
There's that I think it's the Italio Calvino novel. I might have messed his name up, but he has that one novel where every chapter is a different book.
Oh, yeah,
I think that was probably just him. I think that was just him going through all his unfinished manuscripts and like, this is a good story that started and just did that. So maybe one day I'll just make a collage of all the unfinished work that's just in the ether right now.
That's a pretty good idea, actually.
Well, we touched on your writing routine or lack thereof in the past. when you're a young Indiana Jones type. Now that you're a more distinguished gentleman, I'm not assuming a man of leisure, but you're able to be up in the late hours. Has your writing routine changed at all? Has it become more, set in a certain time period or anything?
Yeah, I mean, I've written a second novel, and I did it. I wrote it where Colony took me years and years. I wrote the second one in a year. And the way that I did it was by getting into a routine like that. By that stage, I was able to, because I'd stopped doing the field work so much and I'd started doing reporting. So it's more office based, So suddenly my life had a sense of routine. I was starting at a certain time and finishing at a certain time. And what I did was basically, I kind of trained myself to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning every day for a year. And that's how I did it, basically. I'd put 4 hours in before I started work every day. And I was able to do it. But, it wasn't easy. It took some getting used to.
I've tried the morning routine before, and I crashed and burned hard after a couple of weeks. It's just it's terrible because
to be honest, Caleb, you'll probably live longer.
Yeah,
I swear that routine must have taken 10 years off my life, easy.
Well, I listened to Stephen Kotler talk about flow states and how he would wake up like 3-4 in the morning when his family's still asleep. So he could start writing before he's even fully awake because it helps creativity or something. You're half in that dreamlike state. That didn't work for me. I just wanted coffee and I was just angry all the time.
Yeah.
I didn't get in any flow state at all. So I don't know I think maybe it helps when you're like really rich like he is.
Yeah. Yeah. I just imagine that you're stuck with that routine and gradually your main character just gets more and more angry.
Yeah. gets more haggard throughout.
By the final chapter, he's just in an absolute rage.
Get a real Shining scenario going on.
It was supposed to be a love story and it just lots of murder ended up happening. It's like, that doesn't fit with this at all. But I'm keeping it because I'm angry. Did you have any issues with crafting the characters? Because I noticed in the beginning you had a lot of Russian characters, and were they based just on people maybe you've met throughout the years or things like that? Because I always have trouble kind of writing foreign characters because I can't.
Yeah.
If I've never been to Russia, it'd be hard for me to get in the mind of a Russian.
And the dialect and the speaking, I always find is difficult with those kind of characters,
inflections and things like that.
Yeah, I think with the Russian side of things, that was one of the areas that I really had to research. I didn't know very much about Russia at all, and so there was a lot of time spent sort of getting used to the way that their system works over there, and the sort of national mentality, and how people from different areas respond. I mean, one of the main characters in the book is he's what we think of as a sergeant major, like in the army. So he's like the highest level of non-commissioned officer. So he's a hard ass, basically, up top of his game. And there's a particular rank that refers to that over in Russia and Ukraine, which is Starshina, which there's no equivalent for really over here. So that was, it's little details like that you have to kind of research and pick up on. As for the other characters, though, I think they're more than people I've met before. It's personalities that I've met, and just sort of drawn on.
Just that kind of touches on something that I've always felt intimidated by was coming up, if I wanted to tell a story that dealt with people from the army or just the military and, whatever branch of military. So I'd be so worried I would get it wrong.
Yeah.
Even with research, it's easy to get it wrong if you never lived that life, especially with the ranks and whatnot.
Or just even that you might know it, but as you're typing it out, you flub it and you don't ever realize it or catch it. Yeah. And there's always going to be that one guy that's like, actually. Push up the glasses.
It is a worry. I mean, this is it. There's so much in this book where if somebody was really inclined to do it, they could pick through it, and probably pick holes in some of it. But it's a work of fiction, isn't it? You guys know. At the end of the day, it's this is made up stuff. So the realism that's in there is great, but it's a bonus really in a respect, isn't it? So I don't know. With the military side of things, though, when I was a bit younger, I sort of tried out for a couple of units and had a kind of a dabble in the military side of things. So it kind of interested me, and I was kind of a little bit more familiar, I guess, with the way that mentality works. So that helped to an extent.
You mentioned a second novel that you already finished. Is that another Callum Ross thriller, or is it a different universe completely?
No, it's a different guy altogether. It's so I can't say too much about it because it's it's really early days with it. But it's set in the Peruvian Amazon, and it's a different lead character. He's called Ryan Miller, and yeah, it's the same sort of action, archaeology sort of based narrative. But yeah, it's a different setup really. And what I was hoping to do was kind of write, like one Callum Ross book, and then one with Ryan Miller, and then one with Callum, and so on and so forth.
Oh, do like an alternate. That'd be cool.
Ooh, yeah. Eventually you could have them meet up and they could have like a
crossover.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could do what Stephen King does and try to,
universe
all the books together. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
When you went into well, I'd imagine Colony was just because that's the story you wanted to tell, but especially with the second one, did you think about the niche market of, have thrillers with archaeology themes and stuff? Or are you just telling the story you want to tell? Because when we had Nicholas Obregon on, his publisher kind of wanted him to go more towards the crime fiction for a story because that's what sells, and that's like the niche market.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I had exactly the same experience. It's crime, particularly over here. I don't know if it's the same for you guys. It might be, but in the UK, crime is like the most popular of the genre fiction by a long, long way. If you go into like a supermarket, you look at the books they've got on there, which will all be like the top most popular bestsellers. I reckon maybe anywhere from 60 to 80% of them are probably crime. So obviously for publishers and agents, it's a bonus if they're the person they're representing writes crime. So yeah, I mean, I had a lot of publishers recommend that's what I did. I guess my sort of comeback to that is that I prefer to read, and I very much prefer to write the action stuff, thrillers. And I think you do to a certain extent. You have to be true to yourself in that respect, because otherwise people aren't going to buy it, are they? I think it will come across in your writing that actually you're writing something for commercial purposes rather than because you enjoy it and you're passionate about it. And certainly that's something that I find is quite obvious when I'm reading, Mills and Boon style novels that have just been churned out,
Yeah. Well, not to give you a backhanded compliment, but when I read the synopsis before I started reading any of your novel, I kind of had a preconceived notion of your writing style, and I feel like your writing definitely has a lot more literary merit than I was expecting, which was a very pleasant surprise. So I don't know if that's just with your educational background or anything, but like when you go into reading books, do you like to read kind of the fluffier action stuff, or do you like more things with that goes with your style of writing, more of like the literary with the gore and the action and the fun stuff, but still that nice, beautiful language you use?
Yeah, I think that was, thank you, by the way. That's a really nice compliment. Thank you very much. It's something that I did. I was very sort of like, I was very keen to try and do with this book, basically, was not sort of let it go lapse too far into the kind of the 2D character, sort of side of things that you can get with action thrillers. Yeah. It's obviously there's plot and then there's your characterization, and quite often with action, the plot is the priority by a million miles, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I didn't really want to do that. I did want to like keep the language and the characterization a bit more developed. And I mean, it probably draws a lot on the fact that I read quite an eclectic mix of stuff. I enjoy reading just sort of basic thrillers. I love that experience of not needing to turn the pages. But at the same time, I do love to read stories that have got really beautiful language as well, and stories that are really well written, like Salman Rushdie, Arundhati Roy, and people like that. I do enjoy that stuff as well. So I guess that's probably where it's come from, really. It's kind of an amalgam of those two interests that I've got.
Yeah, it definitely shows in your writing, and I think that's a good way of going about writing a novel, because it doesn't make your novel as forgettable. Like, if you have just your fun action thriller, like you said, they can be fun page-turners that you read, but I've read books like that where I enjoyed them, and then just kind of completely forgot about them.
Well, it's like those old-timey, those books you could buy for a quarter you'd have in your back pocket, and
old pulps or something.
You read it and it's gone,
Like the old Penny Dreadfuls or something. I mean, which is sad, because if you go back and read a lot of those, the language they use is a lot more intricate than a lot of modern fiction, but back then it wasn't. It was just kind of fluff, fun reads.
Well, I mean, the other interesting thing with it, though, Caleb, is that it kind of beats a middle line, and this isn't something that I'd intended to do at all. It's just something I've noticed since people have started posting reviews on Goodreads and stuff. People that their tastes are more literary will say, oh, yeah, I loved the start of the book more, because that's where a lot of the description is, about the island and things. And then people that are more about the action side of things will say,
the second half.
Yeah, I wasn't too keen on the first bit, but I like the second bit, And it kind of sort of beats that path through the middle, which is great, because it means more people are going to enjoy at least one aspect of your writing.
I wanted to talk to you off air, which I will, about the review stuff since you brought those up. But just for on air purposes, because I read some of the reviews, and from what I've seen, everything seemed very, good. I don't think I've seen any negative ones. But have you had any horror stories in regards to reviews? Anybody that just really shredded your work, whether it's a short story or your novel or anything?
Not really. There is one funny thing with it, though, was when I first went on Goodreads, the very first review that I got was a 3-star review, which is fair enough, I mean, that's on Goodreads, that's a recommendation. But it was a very short review. It was basically, this is an okay book, in inverted commas, but it needs more editing, and I just like the scary bits, and it was very short and snappy, and it was the very first review I'd got, and so obviously when I first saw it, I was thinking, oh man, this is how it's going to go down,
It could definitely suck the wind out of your sails there.
Yeah, exactly. But what I did, I had a look at the person who'd posted it. I had a look at the other reviews that she'd put up, and I mean, what I got away with was pretty damn good, really. Like, there were other ones where she'd given it 1 star and just basically said, literally, this is the stupidest book I've ever read in my life.
Well, that's one thing when I go on Goodreads to read reviews, especially when it comes to either indie authors or authors I'm not familiar with, is even if it's a 5-star glowing review or a negative review, whatever, I go to the actual reviewer's page to see their history. Yeah. Because, some you'll see they have a tendency just to eviscerate everything, but not comment on it, not review anything they actually like. You get that with, Yelpers and, there's the whole review culture of just being negative to be negative. And then you have some people who are just almost overly positive, where it's like every book's a 5-star read. So a 3-star read to me, because I've given books I really enjoyed a 3-star read just because I felt that's where, if I have something that I really, really like that's on the top of my list, and then something which I usually don't even review things that I really don't like, but if something's on the bottom, I feel like a middle is very solid. Like you said, a recommendation. Like you would suggest somebody read that book. So that's not a knock, though. Just saying it's okay. Take what you can get when you're starting out, especially when it comes to your first book. You're probably very wary. You're like, oh no, are they going to like it? Are they going to hate it?
Well, at that point, it's just nice to have reviews. Like, somebody read it.
That's the worst thing. The worst review is just no review. Just complete indifference to your work. That's the worst.
Very true. And I mean, it's had quite a few reviews now. And I mean, it's had, I think, on Goodreads, for example, it's had about 70% of them have been 5-star, and the rest of them have been mainly 4. And then I've had 2 or 3 3-star ones as well. One thing that I have noticed is that, and this is kind of counterintuitive, is that it's not the 5-star ones that generate the interest. It's the 4-star ones. And it's a very peculiar mentality that's behind it. But it's, if somebody puts a 5-star review up, you look at it and you look at the 5 stars and you think, yeah, they thought it was great, and you move on. If somebody puts 4 stars up, you look at it and you think, okay, they thought it was great, but there was something they didn't like.
They actually have a critique.
Yeah. And so then you go into it and you're like, okay, so what's the deal? And you get so many more comments on on the 4-star ones, really. And that's another thing, I'd never expected or experienced. So, steep learning curve, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, when you go with Goodread reviews, too, you have to watch who's reviewing, because, for instance, when I review, I don't really review books. I just give a star rating, and that's not actually for the author, that's for my cataloging. Yeah. So if I look back and I go, oh, I enjoyed that book, and if I ever want to reread or just we do that a lot on the podcast where we talk about a book. It's I don't remember how much I like that, and just looking back at the stars, I'll go, oh yeah, that was really good. So I do know a lot of people just use it for cataloging, but then obviously you have the written review, and I'm very wary when I go into those because, like I said, I like to read certain reviews before I get into a book I don't know, and it's easy to get turned off on a book when you see like just usually when it's about the writing too. So as long as you don't get an actual negative review about the writing, like as in grammatical errors, typos, which obviously would be more indie authors, but I think that would be the worst versus just somebody didn't like the story. Because if you don't like the story, that's acceptable.
Yeah,
so
that's a matter of taste.
Yeah, that's fine. But if they actually just think your writing is dog shit, then it's like, oh no.
Yeah. Do you know, I think you're absolutely right. I think the worst thing for me, though, would be if somebody had said it was boring.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, again, the indifference, like if they just, they don't want it. That's terrible.
I remember when I was a lot younger and like I was just first starting getting interested in girls, and I'd met this girl. Me and my mate had gone to the beach, and I'd met this girl, and I couldn't tell whether she liked me or not. You know, and I'd gone off on the evening and I'd said to my mate's mom, just because she was the only girl in the room, really, I said, you know, what should I read into this? She's been saying these things to me and all the rest of it. And she turned to me and she went, look, as long as she doesn't tell you that you're boring, then you got a chance. And I guess that crosses over, you know?
Yeah. That works with so many things. If it's boring, it's just like, movie's boring. That's the worst. It's like, like it's a bad movie you could even enjoy.
Yeah.
But a boring movie nobody enjoys.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, we got a couple more minutes here. I was trying to think of what else we touched on. Like, just with your writing and your writing style, was it easier when you were trying to score a literary agent? Did that help with that, or was that just like one? Because I would imagine I would be very nervous, especially if it's some unsolicited like submission, like, "Hey, you know, I'm a new writer. I don't have any work out." Like, I think that would be that'd be hard to do.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I think unless you're really special, you're going to get rejected by a load of agents, basically, aren't you? Mm. You know, and that happened to me. I must have got half a dozen rejections from agents before the agent that.
You cut off. Keep going. He's going. You can't hear us either, I don't think.
That's it. And it's just about finding that right person.
You cut off, and we didn't hear anything you said after the word agent.
Oh, right.
I guess you couldn't hear us. You're just talking and talking.
Yeah. So, basically, I've forgotten what the hell I was saying now. I think I was just making it up. The problem with it is that, you know, it's such a subjective thing, isn't it? Literature, any art is hugely subjective. So not everybody is, by any stretch of the imagination, is going to like your stuff. But there will be people out there who really do like it. And that's where an element of luck comes into it as well. Because you might find exactly the right person to represent your book. You know, they represent other authors who do the same genre and all that sort of stuff, and they're very good. But it may be that they just don't connect with what you've written. So it is very much about, you know, targeting the right people, but then also luck, really. You know, so you have to have a bit of a thick skin, don't you, to be a writer? You have to be able to take rejections, you know, like anything else.
I think that's one of the big things that's never really brought up when it's coming into breaking into writing or anything creative is like the luck aspect of it, of just like the chance.
Oh, yeah. Well, with the literature landscape right now, especially with the indie culture, you know, it's booming, but it's way oversaturated because now everybody can just publish a book. I feel like a lot of people think they can leapfrog the process. They don't need a literary agent. They don't need a publisher. They can just publish their own work and hope their social media presence would sell the copies. And I think that could be very detrimental if you don't do it in the right way. And again, it's the substance of your book, your writing, your story. That's what has to come first. So as long as you can nail those, I think you can get to, again, luck does come in, you know, no matter what, you got to be lucky. Even if, you know, we see a lot of celebrities like actors and stuff who write novels and they can't get it because just the writing has to be there. It's not an easy endeavor at all. If it was, a lot more people would be rich and famous, I guess.
Yeah, you're right. I think it's one of the best definitions of luck that I ever heard was it's where preparation meets opportunity. So, you know, if you've actually prepared a manuscript which is worthy of publication, and then you manage to get it to somebody, you know, who is actually interested, there's your opportunity, you know. And when those two come together, that's where you've been lucky, because it's not going to happen all the time or for everybody. So it's, it takes both really, doesn't it? You've got to have something solid there that's saleable, but you've also got to get it to the right person, and they've got to be interested on the day, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe they got out the wrong side of the bed. Maybe they've just had a row with somebody, you know? All these factors come into play, don't they?
Well, just as somebody who's read a lot of submissions and been on that other side of just, you know, being able to accept or reject work, I would imagine being a literary agent is actually really hard because it's not just about, you know, you like a story and you have to accept it. You have to know what the publisher's going to like, what you think is actually going to sell, because you can read a really good submission and be like, oh, that story, I love that story, but it's not going to sell. There's no audience for that particular
there's not
story.
a market or anything.
That would be tough. Because I would imagine, and then just rejecting people does suck. I don't like doing it.
Yeah,
you feel like garbage doing. I mean, you get as a writer getting rejected, and as the agent doing the rejecting, you both get a thick skin in the process. So the more you reject people, obviously, the more you would be more comfortable with it, or just not think about it. But as a new writer, it's a terrible feeling. I've had many submissions just for different literary magazines get rejected, and a lot of them I'm just like, I don't think they actually read this at all. It sucks, but it happens. You'll get that a lot too. If there's, you know, any publication that has probably not hundreds of thousands, but thousands of submissions, if it's a contest, then maybe hundreds of thousands. You might not you might not get read. Yeah, they might not even look at it. I might have looked at the title, read the first paragraph of, if you're lucky, your story, but probably just your cover letter, and that's all you get. It happens.
Yeah. And you're right, it's things like you kind of take a victory, don't you, if you get a proper reply as well. Yeah. Even if it's a rejection, rather than a form reply, where they type it out and it's got the wrong name, and everything. It's, as long as somebody's actually taken the time to write you a proper response.
Well, that's what I love is when I actually get any feedback. Even if I got rejected, if I just get the feedback, it's like, So when I get writers that submit, even if I'm rejecting them, I try to give them feedback. If I at least feel it's worthy, because nothing is worse than just the generic, we enjoyed your story, it just wasn't right for our publication. You didn't fucking care.
Thank you for your submission. It's not right for our list at this time. Yeah.
God damn it. Well, again, it happens. Though I do find also a correlation between indie authors and like just being a writer getting rejected, is a lot of indie authors were writers who tried once or twice, got rejected, and just, I'm going to publish my own shit. And I think the rejection process is actually very valuable for a writer, because it does give you a thicker skin, and it makes your writing better. Yeah. You might not like the feedback you get from your beta readers, or especially an editor that you might be working with. You're like, I don't want to take that out. But like you said, 50, 60,000 words out of your novel seems like somebody cut off your arm. But if it makes the pace better and it makes the story better, you can't really complain. It'll make your writing better. It's hard to see when you're the actual writer. Yeah,
no, definitely. And it's another thing, a lot of people I see, talking on Twitter and other places will, one of the most common questions is, should I get an agent? I've heard they're really hard to get. And it's like, well, yeah, they're meant to be, They're the ones that are maintaining a certain standard here. And also, if they weren't sort of, very rigorous in who they took on as clients, then publishers wouldn't trust them, so that there's a reason for it. And you're right. It's, constructive criticism is one of the best things you can get as a writer, and particularly as a new writer.
Well, I know the first I'd say handful of times I got actual critiques and feedback for some of my stories, especially negative feedback. It hurts. Like, it sucks. You just want to be like, I don't want to quit. I want to fucking throw this away. I don't want to do this anymore. And I think that's what separates, I don't want to say real writers, but people who are going to succeed in the, as maybe not necessarily even a career, but just being able to succeed, get stories published, are those who could power through that. You got to accept it.
It's that, and it's stubbornness as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
There comes a point where you just have to say, I'm not going to give in.
Yeah.
just literally be that stubborn and say, no, I'm carrying on with this, and you're going to have it. So, you do. It needs that level of determination as well, doesn't it?
Well, we're about an hour in. I think we covered pretty much everything, unless there's anything you wanted to bring up, Ben.
I think that's it. It's been great talking to you guys. I've had a really good time. It's for midnight on a Thursday. Yeah. This is one of the best times I've had.
One of the few Thursdays I'm not drinking, though. Yeah. Maybe next time. We'd definitely love to have you again. Especially
I
when
was going to say, it's a shame we couldn't share a beer, actually.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Enjoyed that, yeah.
Oh, if I'm ever in England, I got a couple places to go now.
Yeah.
South, North, Scotland, I got all kinds of places. If the world ever opens up again, I don't really want to be on a plane.
If you can ever go someplace.
Funny enough, I get to go to work. That hasn't changed. If I have to go to the
everybody's
IRS,
cool with you going to work. That's absolutely fine. Yeah.
if I have to go talk to the tax man, that always is still open, but everything else, no. Can't go to the movies. Where can our listeners find you? You know, where can they find your book, social media, all that stuff?
Yeah, sure. So there's the official website is www.benjamin-cross.com. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Insta, as we were talking about. I promise I'll get better. And yeah, if you're interested to pick up a copy of Colony, the ebook is available. You can get it from Barnes and Noble. It was the day after it launched. It was a bestseller on Barnes and Noble, on Nook, the ebook version, that is. And you can get it off Amazon as Kindle, and paperbacks should be available pretty soon again. Be able to get them from places like Book Depository and maybe even eBay, I guess.
Excellent. I'm definitely gonna pick up a copy of that. And like I said, keep us updated when your next novel comes out. Yeah. Not just have you. Well, we don't have to have you on again just when your novel comes out. You come on whenever.
Yeah.
If you're free and you want to have an idea you want to talk about, well, we can always use the content.
Anytime, guys. I'd love to. Yeah.
Well, appreciate you coming on so late, and till next time, keep on writing.
See you later.